Mormonism is a demanding faith. It's not just inconvenient. It's a demanding spiritual discipline.
Is Mormonism constricting me? Am I less free for being a Latter-day Saint?
We've made Mormonism such a rigid place in terms of what it looks like to be Mormon.
I was going to be a celestial person. I was going to go to the celestial kingdom. I was the hero in my story until I wasn't.
What is the purpose of organized religion?
I want my religion to call on me, to expect me to become better.
Are there things we need to do, commandments to keep, aspects of our natures to change? Yes. But with His grace, those are within our reach, not beyond our grasp.
There is just so much self-loathing and guilt and shame involved in high-demand religion.
You're right, they don't spend any money in Las Vegas because of the things we all have here, they don't do.
Last I checked, Mormons are not allowed to go to strip clubs.
Right. They don't drink coffee, they don't drink alcohol.
They don't gamble. No gambling, but other than that, it sounds like a really fun life.
When someone decides to dedicate their life to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's not just a social club. They're forming their identity around it, their morality, their spirituality, their families, their marriages, their relationship with extended family, their jobs, their educations, their careers. It infiltrates and interweaves into every aspect of a person's life.
Going to church is hard. It's a big commitment. It's many, many hours a week.
All these crazy rules that we have that make us different, like the principle of tithing, the principle of the fast, home teaching responsibilities, callings, like you name it.
We don't have a professional ministry. It's us. We do it all.
We have this principle in Mormonism of consecration. And ultimately, it's not just a tithe that I'm supposed to give back to the Lord. It's everything that I am, everything that I have, who I am. Right? That's what Mormonism teaches us.
With my busy clinical practice, with my 7 kids at home, serving in the bishopric, present at all the youth functions, meetings all Sunday long, it's a challenge. I mean, I don't get to binge watch any TV shows ever. I think I got to watch one TV show last year.
I've talked to a lot of folks for whom it's quite serious that they find it difficult to live this commandment, that commandment, that commandment, that commandment. All the expectations, it can feel like an ever-increasing pile of things that they aren't, or that they aspire to be but can never quite be.
I didn't feel the unconditional love and charity that I think intuitively knew was at the heart of the gospel. What we're saying we're doing is so beautiful, and the lived experience of it is painful.
There was always this push and pull happening with me. Debauchery is kind of glamorized in all the history of rock and roll, especially, if you look at the 70s and 80s. And those were people that I looked up to, but then I had these foundations from being, raised by faithful parents, and I had to start making some decisions pretty quick, and I didn't always make the right decisions.
Other people are wrestling with the rules and why we have them. Especially the younger generations growing up are not growing up in a place where they just take the rules and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to obey for obedience sake. The younger generations really want to feel like their lives have meaning, that they're expressing their Christianity in a way that is authentic, that is doing actual good in the world. They no longer want to sit in the pews and pat themselves on the back that they have some sort of truth. I can't help but see the irony of so much of the New Testament talking about Jesus and the Pharisees and trying to explain to them why all of their rules were problematic and showing them how to skillfully, he wasn't flaunting the rules, but he was skillfully breaking them. Oh, you have a purity code? Watch me touch this dead body. When there was purpose in it, he took the higher spirit of the law. He taught us that. I feel like that's something we miss sometimes in the way that we enforce the rules that we have. It's something we haven't questioned ourselves on enough, I think.
I think it's hard. I think it's burdensome for sure. I think it's hard when you are required to do things that don't necessarily always make sense. Drinking tea, drinking coffee. There's not immediately bad things that happen when you drink too much tea or too much coffee any more than when you eat too much meat.
Tea, coffee, and alcohol were on the packing list for Mormon pioneers headed west, and the emphasis was moderation, not abstinence. Joseph Smith and other leaders drank wine in Carthage jail and whiskey while detained in Missouri. In 1861, Brigham said, "Some of the brethren are very strenuous upon the word of wisdom, and would like to have me preach upon it, and urge it upon the brethren, and make it a test of fellowship. I do not think I shall do so. I have never done so." By 1898, strict obedience still wasn't required for a temple recommend. By 1921, under President Heber J. Grant, adherence to the word of wisdom became a prerequisite for entering the temple. President Grant called on the saints to live the word of wisdom to the letter by completely abstaining from all alcohol, coffee, tea, and tobacco.
There's a perception that everyone that's there is perfect and following all the rules, and I think the reality is 70–80% of them have an issue.
It's okay. In fact, it's valuable for religions to ask sacrifice of their people. But over time, sometimes you have to do a realignment and make sure that the sacrifice meets the religion. And some sacrifices become more and more nonsensical. Do you stick with them, or do you shift to something else? And that's always a balancing act.
President Joseph F. Smith, as early as 1907, said, "We may not be able to reach it right away, but expect to see the day when we will not have to ask for $1 of donation for any purpose except that which you volunteer to give of your own accord, because we will have tithes sufficient in the storehouse of the Lord to pay everything that is needful for the advancement of the kingdom of God."
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its leaders accused of spending years hiding investments from the public. That includes stocks purchased with tithing.
The church was worried about public perception if it got out that it controlled so much wealth.
The value of its investments ballooned past $100 billion.
I think many active Mormons probably don't care. But why should they care? I suppose because it's always good to know where your money is being spent.
A major lawsuit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has officially been dismissed. James Huntsman, a former church member, sued the church in 2021, claiming it misused $5 million of his tithing donations to fund commercial projects.
The corporation is clearly a business.
The church said the money came from reserve fund earnings, not direct tithing, and a federal judge sided with the church in 2021. Huntsman appealed, but now a panel of 11 judges in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously tossed the case, citing a lack of evidence and First Amendment protections that bar courts from interfering in religious matters. It's the second time the case has been dismissed, and the church welcomed the ruling, reaffirming that tithing funds are used only for religious purposes.
We just want transparency. Nothing nefarious, nothing against the Mormon Church, nothing against Mormons or religions in general. It's all about accountability, transparency, and especially when you're dealing with massive numbers. I just think that the Mormon Church and many other organizations could and should be doing better.
Tithing is what's used to build buildings. It's what's used to pay the light bills. Tithing is what's used to operate some of the church's programs. But tithing is also used for saving, probably around 20%. And that seems like a reasonable use of tithing to save for a rainy day.
The church doesn't need their money, but those people need the blessings that come from obeying God's commandments.
If a destitute family is faced with the decision of paying their tithing or eating, they should pay their tithing. The bishop can help them with their food.
Do we have the option not to pay our tithing?
¿Dar los diezmos?
Nope.
No.
It's breaking a covenant. It is not the exercise of agency anymore. Because what happened to our individual agency? It was enlarged. Now it's more important to represent him. Is this making sense? I mean, it was never hard to pay when I was little. Never hard to pay when I started.
And then all of a sudden you're writing a really big check. You're like, I guess I should just do a quick gut check. I should at least ask myself, do I really believe this? Yeah, I do. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. Of course I believe, write it, But it like it made me like at least think about it. Whereas up until that point, I never even thought about it. It was never hard. I think sometimes when you get money and you get wealth, then you don't need other people as much. You can hire the things that you need. You are told constantly that you're great and smart. I started this company called Omniture, took it public 2006, sold it to Adobe for almost $2 billion. Yeah, I mean, there's a million reasons you could not do this. Sometimes I find a lot of friends that'll make those mistakes and then read the CES letter and be like, oh yeah, I'm out because of the CES letter. But I know them, and that's not the case. They want to do A, B, and C and not feel guilty about it. They don't want to go to church and not feel guilty about it.
As a bishop, I found people carrying so much weight of guilt. I wanted to help people realize that they could be forgiven for things that they had done, and to help them if they were transgressing, they could still come to church, they could still sing in the choir. There are people who go to the temple who are technically worthy to go to the temple. There are people who don't go to the temple who ought to be there because they are among the most righteous people I know.
It's crazy to me that at a time when we are trying to maybe repair something in our relationship with the divine, that we take away from someone the very ordinances that are designed to help us connect with the divine. I mean, what is our sacrament but communion with Christ? Why would we take that from someone who has struggled keeping one of the rules? And we have certain things that we concentrate on, and largely it's what is on the temple recommend questions. That says nothing of somebody's heart. I've had people come into my office who are brokenhearted because they don't know if they can affirm Joseph Smith to be able to get a temple recommend. And yet someone who they deem to be a terrible person down the street can attend their child's wedding, and they are going to be barred from that special day. Shame is really problematic. Shame is saying I am bad, not that I did something bad. And unfortunately, the way that we enforce our rules just brings up a ton of shame on people. We are not skillful at dealing with these issues, especially with the lay clergy.
With almost out any exception, every Mormon youth goes through a spin cycle of serious sexual shame.
At 10 to 19, having maybe 50 different encounters with bishops in interviews because I felt like that was the way that I needed to heal. That's the only way that I can repent because that's what I was taught.
He was telling me, you're on probation until you show that you felt enough guilt and sorrow for me to say you've repented.
Everyone's going to find out about this. Like my parents, I can't do this to my parents.
The most painful thing I think you can do to another human being is to isolate them and cut them off.
Drinking and feeling guilty and then not wanting to go to church because of that, because you feel like you don't fit in, or maybe you're just not sure. And a lot of times people aren't sure and they want to go experiment with something and they feel like they need to do full stop.
If a couple in your ward gets divorced, or a young missionary returns home early, or a teenager doubts his testimony, they do not need your judgment. They need to experience the pure love of Jesus Christ reflected in your words and actions.
It's almost like, oh, I didn't drink as a Mormon, now I need to drink as an ex-Mormon. Oh, I didn't smoke marijuana as a Mormon, now I need to try marijuana. Oh, tattoos and ear piercings are bad, now I need to go get a tattoo and an earring. It's not that they left because they wanted to do those things. It's because all those standards are associated with an organization that they feel hurt them. And so they want to be the opposite of whatever it was that they were previously.
We tell a story about people are lazy. We tell a story that people are not committed, that they just want to go out and sin. Your parents are this, your siblings are this. You've committed time and energy to it. If there's anything that I would want people to understand, if you're on the inside and you're a believer, is that every single person who was committed to this church at one time, who has stepped away for whatever reason, Might you recognize that's the hardest thing, probably the hardest thing they've ever done?
Everybody wants God to meet them where they're at. Every single person. And unfortunately, we have scripted out such a narrow path in Mormonism that says, this is what righteous looks like. This is what faithful looks like. And you get on board, you get in line, or you're not with us.
I teach my kids that we're going to make mistakes, and we have the statue of Christ in the house, and we talk about how his arms are open. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity and about this religion, is that there's been an atonement, and that you can be reconciled and you can repent.
I think that we need to start moving toward those questions being more important. Of how am I loving? How am I exemplifying the life of Jesus in my life, rather than all of the rules? Am I checking off all of the boxes?
Our Father's beautiful plan, even his fabulous plan, is designed to bring you home, not to keep you out. No one has built a roadblock and stationed someone there to turn you around and send you away. In fact, it's the exact opposite. God is in relentless pursuit of you.
I demand religions are not a value to humanity. I'm perfectly okay with them being either reformed or disappear from the face of the earth.
Well, as a member of a high demand religion, I see the frustrations with the shame and the guilt. I also see the value that comes from the commitment and the sense of purpose that high demand religion can often bring you.
Mormonism's optimistic. It breeds a culture of saying yes when you're called on to help, instead of, I don't have time, or sorry.
I love that Mormonism taught me to give 2 years of my life, as a missionary, and asks these crazy things of us.
It's funny, the things that are probably the most inconvenient for me are the ones that also build my faith most. I'm not going to quit being Mormon. I know I'm a better dad than I would be otherwise. I know I'm a better person at work and much kinder and empathetic. I could turn into a monster real easily.
It's great to have boundaries for our children. It helps us with building our identities, with building our values, and the structure is such a great place to grow up in, where we can actually thrive.
I once said to a young woman that was dating my son and felt a particular hostility toward the church. I said, members of the church have better marriages, longer marriages, lower rates of divorce, longer lives, better health, and greater overall happiness. I said, don't believe a word of it. Just join for the fringe benefits. And maybe that's what I would say to some of my dear relatives that have left us.
For me, living the standards was one of the best things about Mormonism. And to this day, I've never tried alcohol. My wife is the only person I've ever had sex with. I've never tried drugs. I love that stuff about Mormonism. And if it's true, I'll stand on my head for 10 years if it's true.
I think that a lot of people come to church with an idea of like what the ideal or the perfect church is. And they want a church that's sort of made after their own image. They want a church that's never going to contradict them. It's never going to challenge them. And I actually did this once, right? I sat down and I wrote a list of here's what the perfect church would look like. And I could do that, but then, I'm not perfect. I have false ideas, right? And so all I would be doing is creating another false church, right? And who needs that?
I think still one of the church's biggest selling points is its high expectations. When you expect a lot, you receive a lot. And oftentimes when you expect a lot from members, they derive a lot of benefit from giving their all to something. And so if the church were hiring me as their consultant, and maybe they would do that at some point, I would say don't let go on being a high demand religion. Just have high expectations, but a lot of empathy and compassion. And don't have high expectations in ways that are damaging or deadly to people.
The church has three functions. It's a place to teach us about the love of God, a place to teach us to love ourselves, a place to teach us to love other people. If we're doing something that doesn't one of those three things, it's not worth worrying about. So there are rules, we have commandments, we have things that we need to do, but no one is perfect. No one honors everything. We're all in a process of evolving spiritually. Let's help one another. That's why we're here on Sunday, to help one another evolve spiritually, to become what we are capable of becoming.
I have had the obstacles in my life that I've had, and I've been in the rooms that I've been in, and I've gotten to where I am now, and it's never wavered for me, and now I have 3 boys and my wife, and it just keeps giving.
Anytime you change something, you have this decision tree. Are we going to strengthen our identity or weaken our identity by changing?
Elder Packer, many years ago, expressed his concern that we were over-programming the church in order to offer medicinal treatment to members of the church. And the church is recognizing that we are over-programmed. And so they are moving back.
It is time for a home-centered church.
The Sunday meeting schedule will be adjusted.
Creating greater autonomy for parents and individuals and families to make decisions on their own. And I think that will continue.
As Joseph Smith said, and I think he was right, that a religion that doesn't require sacrifice is a religion that is not going to work. It's not going to accomplish the kind of transformation that it's promising. And it's only to the degree that I can put down the burden of my own life lived for my own sake, that I can get outside of myself enough to connect to other people and not feel alone and feel alive and participate in love. And all of those things by definition are going to involve inconvenience.
That's one of the things that I find so stretching for myself. In what sense should religion be comfortable? To what extent should faith push us into moments where we are in fact disoriented?
I think, unfortunately, we've been raised to believe that if we do something right, we'll be rewarded, and if we do something wrong, we will be punished by God. That is the traditional Christian paradigm. But I don't think it's ours. We need to expect that trying to live a better life, trying to improve our lives, is going to cause suffering at one level or another.
I think one of the major issues we have within Mormonism is such a high level of cultural conformity and such a high emphasis. You end up with this sort of cookie cutter way of trying to mold our families and individuals. And I think that this is a real detriment to Mormonism. I think it makes Mormonism inhospitable to difference. And I think it's part of why people can't feel comfortable and feel like they need to leave. And I think we need to get really comfortable with difference and different ways in which people sort of appropriate Mormonism for themselves.
I think one of Mormonism's biggest inconveniences is that we go to a church and are part of a ward that we don't choose. It's just based on where you live. So that means you're thrown together with people who you wouldn't affiliate with otherwise. Just like Jesus says, it's easy to love your friends. It's easy to love people who are just like you. And the sociological genius of the Mormon ward is that it doesn't allow you to do that.
Living in a Christian community where there are a lot of people that drive you nuts is a really excellent spiritual practice.
Did you ever get like one of those tumblers where you put a bunch of rocks into this thing and then it tumbles them and then they come out smooth and beautiful?
I think that's one of the most powerful parts of Mormonism. It is precisely the ward that becomes a laboratory of love.
I struggle going to church, but every time my butt hits the pew, I know that I'm in the right place.
I want the people that disagree, that don't like when people are judgmental, that have a hard time with drinking, that are screwing around with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They still come back. And when someone says something to them that they don't agree with, they stand up and be like, no, that's not right. I want those people to stay in and fight. That's what we need. Because if we lose all those people, we're going to be a pretty vanilla milquetoast place. And it is going to not do nearly as well as if we had the leaders and the passionate people fighting.
It's easy to create a bubble around us in an echo chamber. Like, this is my tribe. These are the people who see the world as I do. It's so healthy to have that. and to really intentionally put ourselves into relationship with difference, total difference. Like, this person sees the world completely differently than I do. This person holds their faith completely differently than I do. To me, that dialectical tension, to have just enough sameness and just enough difference, it catalyzes more and more growth.
That's where true religion is. It's in the constant churning of wrestling with what it means to be a human being and to be in community and to be in covenant with people around you and to mess it up all the time.
Church has also evolved through continuing revelation, and more has been added each decade, and things have improved. Mistakes that have been made have been corrected. My spiritual path outside of the church was a very solitary path, alone. It was between me and God. When I came back to sacrament meeting and sat there among my fellow members in the body of Christ, I felt the presence of God, the light of God, the Spirit of God so strong that for the first month or two, every sacrament meeting, I just sat there and sobbed and cried because I was so overwhelmed by the feeling of the collective Spirit of Christ in that room.
If it really is the greatest commandment, right, that we love God and love our neighbors as ourselves, then we have to be constantly in relationship with the neighbor.
I would love to have someone stand up in sacrament being like, I'm drinking right now, and I'm not really sure what to do with it. I don't really want anyone's opinions. How refreshing would that be? Because there's a bunch of people in there that are doing that. I know there are in my ward because I know some of them. And I'm not doing it with them. But, I've had my moments, and I've definitely know there's people that are doing it now.
I think there's a great hubris involved in assuming that we as a people or as individuals have arrived at a kind of end point of religious understanding. I think the point is that we have to be engaged in a lifelong process of pursuing an ever more complete understanding of the gospel plan and the nature of heavenly things.
There's the adage that says, heaven should just be just beyond our reach, else what is a heaven for? That idea of it's supposed to be hard.
I feel like I'm spending my time doing what to me is important.
I've always had hope. I've never, ever felt like, okay, I've had enough of this, enough. Because each year I'm in the church, it gets better. Not worse, better.
If I sinned or made mistakes, I didn't feel like I've got to get out. I felt, as I've gotten older, I've understood the atonement more and Christ's mission, and it's helped me so much. And I think that that's something that if everyone maybe accepted more, it would be easier to stay in the faith.